Hello, I'm Kayla Karinen. Thank you to the organizers for putting on WILA 13.
And I'm Kate Remlinger. Thank you for attending our presentation, What's Left When a Language Recedes, Belonging and Placemaking in the Linguistic Landscape of Hancock, Michigan. Excuse me. When we look around us, the landscape offers a certain perspective from wherever we stand. The perspective is shaped by the meanings that we draw from the images, sounds, languages, colors, architecture that surround us. Linguistic and material objects are central to these meanings, and together they create a landscape that reflects the history, language, people, and place, everyday ways of being and doing that make a place recognizable and identifiable. In this study, we examine how meanings related to Finnishness are reflected in the linguistic landscape of Hancock, Michigan, a small town in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Our research site that you see in the box here is located in the Keweenaw Peninsula, a 70-mile stretch of land jutting into Lake Superior in the northwestern part of the Upper Peninsula, which is also known as the UP. The predominance of Finnish ancestry is illustrated in the most recent census map of ethnic ancestry, with 21% to nearly 40% of residents in the Keweenaw claiming Finnish heritage. This claim is reinforced by city officials who identify Hancock as the Finnish American Nesting Place, and the city government includes the Finnish Theme Committee that creates and directs various festivals and events. The value of Finnishness is so strong that the area, also known as the Copper Country, has been called Kuparisaari, Finnish for Copper Island, since the mid-1800s when copper mining was a main industry. As a whole, the Upper Peninsula has been a major destination for Finns, especially during the peak years of migration during the late 19th century and early decades of the 20th century. Several Upper Peninsula communities had large Finnish populations. While the Finnish language is spoken in the area, it's most often a second language or recited and memorized as words and phrases. As you'll see, these phrases and words are commodified to sell items like t-shirts and hats and stickers and signs and other things. Historian Arthur Thurner lists the multitude of nationalities that settled in the region. Joining European and African Americans and the indigenous Anishinaabe were people from England, Ireland, Scotland, Cornwall. Others were Germans, Austrian, Belgians, Bulgarians, Croatians, Danes, Dutch, Finns, Swiss, French, Greeks, Hungarians, Italians, Lithuanians, Norwegians, Poles, Romanians, Russians, Slovenians, as well as Armenians, Turks, Syrians, Chinese, Japanese, and Australians. Heritage languages and related cultural practices were maintained through interaction at home, in neighborhoods, rural communities, social organizations, temperance societies, lodges, cooperatives, and church services. While most immigrant languages were lost after the second and third generation, Finnish was maintained for 4 and 5 generations and continues to have a significant effect on the local variety of American English. Although today the Finnish language has receded in the area as a spoken language, the language and related material, culture, and cultural practices are drawn upon as people discursively reimagine the area as Finnish and claim Finnish or Finn identities.
We examine the linguistic landscape through an interdisciplinary lens, with a focus on how social, cultural, linguistic, and semiotic practices discursively reimagine the place. For us, how Hancock, Michigan is reimagined as Finnish, and how local residents claim Finn or Finnish identities. We do this by investigating the discursive practices and related social meanings that are reflected in the linguistic landscape, and more importantly, how ideologies about language, place, and people reinforce these meanings. As Barty and Wagner argue, these are all part of a dynamic process of meaning making. The related social meanings can and do shift over time and space. Linguistic and semiotic practices reflect the ways in which social meanings change over time, or what Michael Silverstein calls orders of indexicality. These practices also reflect how meanings vary from place to place or group to group, which Penny Eckert calls fields of indexicality. For example, meanings associated with the Finnish language and culture in Hancock have taken on new meanings from those in Finland. Benedict Anderson's work, Imagined Communities, is important for examining the function of discursive placemaking practices, while research compiled in Hornip and DeRoy's 2018 edited collection demonstrates the unique role played by language and culture in processes of placemaking and belonging. Historical approaches are vital for understanding how Finnish immigration to the Upper Peninsula and resulting language and culture contact have not only influenced the variety, but also define local communities, cultural practices, and the emphasis on Finnishness. Linguistic landscape studies of shifting and post-heritage language communities, like Hancock, examine how language use in public spaces functions indexically. In other words, how the social meanings are communicated in the landscape. Language use can be mobile and transient, such as bumper stickers, graffiti, text and images on t-shirts and caps, or more permanent like that in shop, traffic, and street signs, as well as in building names. As Barnett and Bagnett describe, quote, the term linguistic is no longer just confined to verbal and written languages, but embraces the complexity of semiotic spaces as people, as authors, actors, and users, all of which is part of the linguistic landscape analysis, end quote. In addition to examining the linguistic landscape, we employ ethnographic methods, including participant observation and unstructured interviews, as we informally and often spontaneously engage with the community members to develop our understanding of Finnishness. We take a qualitative approach to excavate the patterns of meaning reflected in the data. We primarily collected data by documenting the landscape with photos, videos, and field notes. Here's a screenshot showing an example of how we coded our data of over 120 pictures. The criteria are listed on the top row of the sheet, including top-down versus bottom-up, linguistic and semiotic features, periphery versus center, and so on. We highlighted the most significant findings in pink. Some problems with such large-scale data collection include sampling size, categorization, and coding of the data to identify images as placemaking or belonging, because oftentimes the indexes overlapped. Throughout the landscape, we find abundant uses of Finnish. These include standard contemporary Finnish and more often localized uses. Direct and indirect indexes reflect the history of language and culture contact, resulting in language transfer and borrowings. For example, spelling changes, the loss of the umlauts on the ä and the ö in the Finnish last names Pietilä and Lepistö. And löylyä, the steam that arises from adding water to the sauna stove, is in the partitive, and you can see that this has been simplified to löylä. Pikku America is a street name where a Finnish heritage community has cottages. Here, Amerikka is spelled with one K, opposed to two as in standard Finnish. And locally, juusto, a kind of baked raw milk cheese, is known as juustoa, where the a particle suffix has fossilized, and in Finland, this would be known as leipäjuusto. A curious phonetic feature is the ja transfer with juustoa, but not with surnames such as Jarvi, Jukkari, and Juntala, which uses the ja sound. We also find linguistic indexes of Finnishness, including a monument commemorating a local historical figure, first in Finnish and then in English, as well as the sign Tervetuloa ystäväni that welcomes guests at the Kliva Cafe. In addition, we find Finnish names for restaurants, parks, and streets, which we'll show you later, as well as menus with Finnish labels for meals and food items, such as panukakku and kahvi, as well as the monthly periodical, the Finnish American Reporter, which is the largest and most circulated Finnish newspaper in North America. Every issue features a quote in Finnish on the top. Restaurants like Kliva Cafe lay claim to Finnishness and reinforce its value discursively with the name, signage, menu items, and architecturally with the use of fallen red. Lexical features such as panukakku and maastohiihto and the phonological features like the anglicized pronunciation of Kaleva instead of Kaliva have become unregistered. In other words, recognized as local dialect features and valued for the related social meanings with Finnishness. And as a correction, locally they say Kaliva, and in standard Finnish it's Kaleva. Coupled with linguistic performances of Finnishness, we find material objects, which together with language reflect semiotic indexes. Semiotic refers to associating meanings. The semiotic indexes of the material objects include colors, images, symbols, and other metalinguistic features, such as the Marimekko-inspired flowers on the side of the North Wind bookstore in the first image, as well as the sale of Finnish candies, such as the Fazer Finnish Chocolate Company selling lakritsi or licorice, which features moving characters on the purple candy package in the second picture. The flag at the former Lutheran church is especially significant, considering that the church helped to maintain Finnish language and culture in Hancock through Finnish language services, among other cultural practices. We find that some meanings associated with certain symbols, such as the Finnish lion on the coffee package, have shifted meaning over time in Finland to be appropriated with white nationalist, whereas in Hancock, the symbol correlates with an idealized Finland in a sense of Finnishness. These shifts are described by Michael Silverstein as indexical orders. The Finnish lion has taken on new and different meanings over time. Penny Eckert further develops this idea to explain how related meanings vary not only over time, but from place to place, creating a field of meaning, or indexical field.
The indexical field includes the social meanings communicated through material objects and cultural practices. For example, foods marketed as Finnish, like the bread you see here with Finnish name lippu. Although rag rug weaving has been common practice among many heritage groups, rag rugs like the one you see here are recognized and valued as traditional objects. In addition to rag rugs, woven wall hangings, placemats, and other decorative and functional household objects are recognized as Finnish. In fact, weaving classes are some of the most popular courses offered at the Finnish American Folk Arts School at Finlandia University. The folk arts school and festivals like Juhannus and Heikenpäivä intentionally maintain and reinforce these as other folk ways and cultural practices. Of all the cultural practices we found, sauna is the most ubiquitous throughout the landscape and the most significant in terms of identity and placemaking. Many families take a Saturday night sauna or have friends over for a sauna. Homes, cottages, and university dorms have saunas. Children are enculturated through family sauna time and with creative and literary activities, as illustrated by this coloring book. We also find local shops that reinforce sauna culture and thereby Finnishness by selling sauna stoves, sauna birch and pine soap from Finland, and sauna accessories like the backrest and pillow pictured here, which discursively emphasizes Finnishness with the Finnish language label. Discursively, sauna is both a cultural practice, and a linguistic practice. Throughout the US, most English speakers pronounce the word as sauna. But in the UP, many people pronounce it as sauna, which is closer to the standard Finnish pronunciation. This shibboleth functions not only as an identity marker marking insiders and outsiders, those who say sauna versus those who say sauna, but also a symbol of authenticity, because as we found on t-shirts and other objects, quote, real Finns know how to pronounce sauna, end quote. As we all know, language is central to discursive practices of identity or belonging, and agency is a significant factor. Bumper stickers rely on language, not only to create a sense of place and thereby claim Finnish identity for those who would post the stickers on their car or another place like their computer or water bottle, but also to reinforce perceptions of authenticity. Excuse me. The sticker, Saatana Perkele, illustrates the significance of language and agency in the discursive performance of identity. Saatana Perkele is profanity that literally means evil spirit or devil, but translates as various really strong English profanities. Linguistically, this is an example of what Barbara Johnstone refers as feature dropping, the intentional use of recognizable linguistic features that functions to claim an authentic, local, and here ethnic identity. The example is especially poignant, not only in terms of agency through the use of a Finnish phrase that's not well known in the area, but also, and more importantly, draws on idealized perceptions of authenticity. Only a real Finn would understand this phrase and shout it out loud by smacking the sticker on the back of their car. The license plate holder and mug use most recurring linguistic features we found, sisu, or what's locally pronounced sisu, and you can see it roughly translated on the mug. In addition to sisu is the use of mitakulu, and the overt claim of Finnish American identity. And mitakulu means how are you in Finnish. We also see the use of Finnish and American national colors, red, white, and blue and white, and the flags. And together these discursively index an authentic Finnish identity. While Satana Berkeley and Sisu index authentic Finnishness in Hancock, they don't index these meanings in Finland. In fact, one rarely sees a Sisu sticker or a coffee mug with Sisu on it in Finland. And to exclaim Satana Berkeley would violate Finnish politeness practices. Localized features of heritage languages, as with symbols associated with the homeland, like the Finnish lion, often take on different meanings than the same features used in Finland, thereby populating the indexical fields with claims of authenticity and belonging. Similarly, the owner of the license plate, Metsami, claims an authentic Finnish identity and promotes his wood carving business with the Finnish Metsämies, excuse my pronunciation, which means hunter or forester. The Finnish name day sign that you see in the last photo is another important discursive identity, as well as geosemiotic placemaking practice, with its location on the side of the Finnish American Heritage Center and adjacent to the Finnish flag. While the use of Finnish and English on the sign is interesting in itself, for us, the significance lies in the understanding of nimipäivä, or name day, and how this understanding is both a cultural practice and identity marker. Real Finns understand the language use on the sign, the name and the nickname celebrated on May 24, as well as the cultural significance of name days. Excuse me. Placemaking practices intentionally claim a space, and in Hancock, this occurs through linguistic and semiotic practices, most notably naming and the use of national colors. In fact, in the 1980s, the City Council of Hancock directed shop owners on the main street to use blue and white signage. Naming is found in rough translations of English and Finnish street name signs, the Tori or outdoor market, and across Finlandia University's campus on buildings like you see here with Hirvonen Hall, and others, the Mackey Library, the Juntila Center, and Koskela House. Porvoo Park, with its Finnish name, geographically and officially creates an authentic connection to Finland and Finnishness. This connection is reinforced by the fact that Hancock and Porvoo, Finland have official status as sister cities. Finally, the Sisu sticker discursively claims the entire Upper Peninsula as Finnish by dotting the I with the outline of the Upper Peninsula and the symbolic use of blue and white.
These maps illustrate the intensity and reach of our findings. The map on the left demonstrates our findings throughout the Kievan Peninsula. The map on the right focuses on Hancock, where you see the large cluster of pins. As we move away from the center and into the periphery, the reach of Finnishness is long, stretching 70 miles up the Kievan Peninsula. Yet the intensity weakens. We find fewer linguistic demonstrations of cultural identity than in Hancock, and instead, Finnishness is more often represented semiotically. For example, with the Finnish flag and the Finnish national colors on houses and signs. These are the most predominant findings. However, what remains pervasive throughout the landscape, both at the center and in the periphery, are the use of Finnish surnames on shop signs and street names to reimagine the place as Finnish. sisu, sauna, and saatana perkele. This trifecta represents the overall significance of our findings and the discursive practice of belonging and placemaking in Hancock, as they are the most pervasive and have taken on new meanings over time. In particular, we find that these and other linguistic features and cultural symbols are commodified to sell coffee mugs, sauna accessories, and bumper stickers. But more importantly, these discursive practices reimagine the city as Finnish and make claims about authenticity. Direct and indirect indexes reflect a history of culture and language contact, resulting in language transfers and borrowings. The linguistic landscape certainly plays a role in shaping this locally valued identity related to Finnishness. While the language may not be present verbally, at least not publicly, Finnishness is indexed linguistically and materially, and this clearly stands out in Hancock. Whether it be the sea of blue and white that ripples throughout the town, the bilingual street signs, or even the sisu and Finnish flag bumper stickers endlessly zooming by on the back of cars. You can be sure to also enjoy some pannukakku with your coffee at the local Kliva cafe. As we have demonstrated, the ideological effects of Finnishness in the linguistic landscape reinforce values of Finnishness, while simultaneously erasing languages and identities of other residents past and present. Italian, German, Irish, Croatian, Chinese, the indigenous Ojibwe, and African Americans, among others. In short, the collective discursive practices in European and Scandinavian heritage language communities function ideologically to affect both belonging and placemaking, typically Eurocentric and grounded in whiteness. As we have illustrated, an interdisciplinary linguistic landscape approach is valuable in understanding heritage communities and how discursive practices function to claim identity and space. Future research might include additional ethnographic data, such as interviews with shop owners, city council, and even the Finnish theme community, to further examine the role of agency and the discursive practices that shape the landscape. Thank you for listening to our talk. Here are our citations, and if you would like more information, don't hesitate to email us. Thank you.